The first time Zexai saw humans in combat, he thought he was watching a species commit elaborate suicide. This was during the opening phase of what historians now call the Terran Integration Wars, though at the time, the Galactic Council simply called it pest control. Zexai had been a reconnaissance specialist aboard the Vorthan dreadnought Crimson Talon, part of a joint task force sent to investigate reports of unusual activity in the Outer Rim territories. The humans had been classified as a primitive species, barely achieving faster-than-light travel, no energy shields, projectile weapons that seemed laughably primitive compared to plasma weaponry. Intelligence reports suggested they had stumbled into space travel by accident and were slowly expanding into uninhabited systems like a virus spreading through a weakened host. The mission parameters were simple: investigate their largest outpost, assess their technology, and, if they proved troublesome, eliminate them as a potential future threat. Standard procedure for pre-spaceflight species that had somehow acquired dangerous technology. The human outpost was built into an asteroid in the Kepler 442 system, a crude collection of metal corridors and atmospheric domes that looked like it had been assembled by children playing with construction blocks. Zexai remembered laughing at the tactical briefing when Commander Vextol pointed out their fortifications, a few plasma turrets that wouldn't have challenged a cargo hauler, and what appeared to be kinetic missile launchers that belonged in a museum. "Look at this pathetic display," Vextol had said, his forearms gesturing dismissively at the holographic display. "They haven't even bothered to shield their reactor cores. This will take less than a standard hour." The attack began at 0600 hours, standard galactic time. 3 dreadnoughts, 2 battlecruisers, and a full wing of fighters, enough firepower to level a small moon. The humans had exactly 47 souls on that station, according to their own transmission logs recovered later. 47 beings against a force that had subjugated 17 different star systems. Zexai watched from his position at the reconnaissance station as the fleet moved into attack formation. The humans didn't even attempt to flee. Their station maintained standard operations, their communication channels remained open, and their workers continued their shifts as if they couldn't see the massive alien warships approaching their home. "Primitive species often freeze when confronted with superior force," explains Science Officer Kelnam. "Their neural patterns cannot process the reality of their situation." The first plasma barrage hit their outer defensive grid. Ancient point defense systems that should have been overwhelmed in seconds somehow managed to track and intercept the incoming fire with an efficiency that made Zexai's mandibles click in confusion. These weren't supposed to be advanced targeting computers, they were mechanical systems, crude rotating cannons that physically aimed at targets. "Sir," called out Weapons Officer Quindar, "their defensive systems are adapting. They're predicting our firing patterns." Commander Vextol's head tentacles rippled with amusement. "Impossible. They're using primitive ballistic computers. Continue the assault." But, as the battle progressed, something became clear that would haunt Zexai for the rest of his existence. The humans weren't using computers to predict their attacks. They were using their minds. Each defensive turret was manually operated by a human gunner who was somehow calculating the trajectory, speed, and timing of plasma bolts moving at significant fractions of light speed. "How are they doing that?" whispered Navigation Officer Lemka, her voice carrying a note of fear that Zexai had never heard from a veteran of 40 campaigns. The answer came when the humans finally opened communication channels. The face that appeared on their screens was unlike anything in Zexai's experience, not because it was alien, but because of the expression it wore. There was no fear, no desperation, no pleading for mercy. The human male, elderly by their species standards with white hair covering his face, looked directly into the camera with what Zexai would later learn was a smile. "Good morning," the human said in heavily accented Galactic Standard. "I'm Station Commander Mitchell Harrison, formerly of the Terran Colonial Marines. I'm assuming you're here to negotiate our surrender." Commander Vextol activated the threat display protocols, causing his image to appear with full military honors and intimidation enhancers. "You will surrender immediately and submit to Galactic Council authority. Your species has been deemed a potential threat to galactic stability." The human's smile widened. "I'm afraid that's not going to work for us, Commander. You see, we've got 47 good people on this station, and every single one of them volunteered to be here knowing exactly what might happen. We're not military, Commander. We're colonists, engineers, farmers. But we're also human, and humans have a saying, you don't get to kill us without earning it. What followed was 3 hours of the most intense combat Zexai had ever witnessed. The humans fought with a coordination that seemed impossible for such a small force. Their point defense systems, operated by individual gunners, achieved hit rates that exceeded even AI-controlled systems. Their communications remained calm and professional even as sections of their station were vaporized around them. But it was their tactics that truly disturbed Zexai. When their defensive turrets were destroyed, the humans didn't retreat deeper into their station. Instead, they moved closer to the outer hull, using maintenance tunnels and service corridors to position themselves where they could manually fire small arms through hull breaches at incoming fighters. "Sir," reported Tactical Officer Wundus, "we're detecting human life signs in the vacuum." They're outside their station. The main viewscreen shifted to show the impossible sight of humans in environment suits, using nothing but magnetic clamps and handheld weapons to engage starfighters in direct combat. They were using their station's destroyed defensive turrets as cover, firing projectile weapons at craft moving at combat speeds, and somehow achieving hits. "That's not possible," Commander Vextal said, his voice losing its confident edge. "They can't be calculating those intercept courses manually." But they were. Zexai watched as a human with the designation Rodriguez AM used a handheld rocket launcher to destroy a fighter that was strafing the station's agricultural dome. The human had to account for his target's speed, his own position on a rotating asteroid, the fighter's evasive maneuvers, and the travel time of his projectile, all while standing in the vacuum of space with nothing but a basic targeting computer. When Rodriguez's suit was breached by return fire, he didn't retreat. He sealed the breach with what appeared to be industrial tape and continued fighting. "Commander," Zexai found himself saying, "perhaps we should reconsider our approach. These beings demonstrate remarkable silence." Vextal snapped. "They are primitives with good reflexes. Bring the dreadnought to close range and finish this." The Crimson Talon moved to within 10,000 kilometers of the station, close enough that its main batteries could punch through any remaining shielding. But, as they approached, the humans did something that defied every tactical manual in the Galactic database. They attacked. Using modified cargo tugs and mining equipment, the humans launched a direct assault on the dreadnought. Zexai watched in horrified fascination as these improvised craft, which should have been destroyed instantly by point defense systems, somehow made it through the Crimson Talon's defensive grid. The lead craft was piloted by Station Commander Harrison himself. As his vessel approached the dreadnought's primary sensor array, he opened a channel to the Vorthen Bridge. "Commander Vextal," Harrison said, and his voice was steady despite the plasma fire erupting around his small craft, "I want you to understand something. We're not soldiers. But we are humans, and humans have been killing things that were bigger and stronger than us since we learned to make pointy sticks. The only difference between you and a saber-toothed tiger is that you can scream in more languages." Harrison's craft impacted the sensor array and detonated. The explosion was small, barely enough to damage the dreadnought's armor, but it sent a message that resonated through every alien mind on the bridge. These humans had just demonstrated that they would ram a military vessel with a civilian craft to defend their home. But the real horror began when the explosion cleared. The humans hadn't been trying to destroy the sensor array. They had been delivering something. "Security alert," came the announcement through the ship's communication system. "Unknown organisms detected on decks 7 through 12. The humans had somehow used their suicide attack to board the dreadnought." Zexai accompanied the security team sent to investigate the breach. What they found was evidence of something that military scientists had declared theoretically impossible. Humans had survived explosive decompression, crossed the vacuum of space, and cut through military-grade hull plating using nothing but portable tools. The boarding party consisted of 12 humans led by someone identified in the station logs as Gunny Sergeant Patricia Wong, retired. When Zexai's team finally cornered them in the dreadnought's auxiliary power core, Wong activated her suit's communication system. "I'm going to tell you something, alien," Wong said, her voice carrying an accent that Zexai later learned indicated origins from a region called Texas.
My people have been fighting and dying on hostile worlds for generations.
We've survived ice ages and supervolcanoes, plague and famine, predators that could tear us in half and environments that would kill most species in minutes. And we've done it all with our brains, our tools, and our absolute refusal to quit fighting.
The security team leader, a veteran Krex warrior named Thulmas, activated his plasma rifle. Surrender, humans. You are outgunned and surrounded.
Wong smiled, that same expression that Commander Harrison had shown.
Son, you're not outgunning anybody.
You're about to learn why humans are the only species in known space that practices persistence hunting. What happened next was later classified by the Galactic Council, but Zexai was there. He saw how 12 humans with primitive weapons and improvised tactics systematically dismantled a 40-being security force equipped with the finest military technology in the galaxy.
The humans didn't fight like any known species.
They didn't rely on superior strength or advanced weapons. Instead, they used their environment, their tools, and something that Zexai had never encountered in decades of military service, the absolute refusal to accept defeat. When Gunny Sergeant Wong was finally cornered in the power core control room, she had been shot 3 times and was bleeding from multiple wounds. A rational being would have surrendered.
Wong activated the manual override for the power core's cooling system.
You want to kill humans, she said into her communicator.
You better bring more ships. The power core didn't explode, that would have been suicide, and Zexai later learned that humans almost never chose suicide when they could choose to keep fighting.
Instead, Wong had triggered an emergency shutdown that would take 3 hours to repair, during which time the dreadnought would be dead in space. 3 hours was exactly how long it took for the human reinforcements to arrive. Zexai later learned that the 47 people on that asteroid station had been volunteers, colonists who had stayed behind when their colony ship moved on specifically to serve as an early warning system. They had known that hostile contact was inevitable and had prepared for exactly this scenario. But the most disturbing thing, the detail that would follow Zexai through every nightmare for the rest of his life, was what the humans had been doing during those 3 hours while the Crimson Talon was dead in space.
They had been learning.
Every human who died had transmitted tactical data back to their command structure. Every failed strategy, every successful defense, every detail about Vorthan technology and tactics was being recorded, analyzed, and distributed to other human forces throughout their territory. The humans who had died on that asteroid hadn't been fighting to win. They had been fighting to teach their species how to kill Vorthans. When the human fleet arrived, 47 small craft that looked like they had been built in shipyards and garages rather than proper military facilities, they attacked with a precision that suggested months of planning. They knew exactly where to hit the Vorthan ships to disable them. They knew which frequencies to jam to disrupt communications. They knew how to exploit every weakness that the defenders of the asteroid station had discovered with their lives.
The engagement lasted exactly 18 minutes.
3 dreadnoughts, 2 battlecruisers, and a full fighter wing were either destroyed or captured by a force of human civilians using converted cargo ships. As his own escape pod was pulled into the cargo bay of a human vessel, Zexai found himself face to face with Station Commander Harrison, who had somehow survived his apparent suicide run against the dreadnought. Commander Zexai, Harrison said, reading from a datapad.
Reconnaissance Specialist, 43 years of service, veteran of the Andromeda campaign. You've got a choice to make.
Zexai looked around the cargo bay, noting the humans who were treating Vorthan wounded with the same care they gave their own people.
What choice?
Harrison smiled, that same terrifying expression.
You can go home and tell your people what happened here. Every detail. Every tactic. Every mistake your commanders made. Or you can stay and learn how humans really fight. I don't understand. Son, Harrison said, what you witnessed today wasn't a battle. It was a job interview.
We needed to know if your people could learn from their mistakes and adapt their tactics.
The question is, are you smart enough to realize that we just gave you a gift? Zexai spent 3 months as a prisoner of war in human territory.
It was the most educational experience of his life.
He learned that humans had been preparing for galactic contact for decades.
He learned that they had developed tactics specifically for fighting superior technological forces. Most importantly, he learned that humans viewed war not as a contest of strength or technology, but as a form of problem solving. When he was finally released and returned to Vorthan space, HFY delivered a complete report to the Galactic Council. He explained human tactics, their technological capabilities, and their psychological approach to combat. He recommended immediate diplomatic contact to establish peaceful relations. The Council declared his report to be the product of Stockholm Syndrome and ordered a full military response to the human threat. That decision cost the galaxy 40 billion lives. 6 months after the disaster at the asteroid station, HFY found himself aboard the Galactic Council vessel Unity of Purpose, part of a massive fleet assembled to deal with what military commanders now called the human problem. The fleet consisted of over 300 vessels from 12 different species, representing the largest military force ever assembled by the Galactic Council. Their target was Proxima Station, humanity's primary military installation in contested space. Intelligence reports indicated that the station housed approximately 50,000 humans and served as their main coordination center for military operations. The plan was simple: overwhelm the station with superior numbers and firepower, capture their command structure, and force a systematic surrender of all human forces. HFY had been assigned to the Intelligence Division despite his controversial report about human capabilities. His commanding officer, Admiral Kexthal of the Hegemony Navy, made it clear that his role was purely observational. "Your experience with human tactics makes you valuable as an analyst," Admiral Kexthal had explained during the mission briefing. "But your recommendations regarding diplomatic solutions have been noted as overly cautious." The admiral was a veteran of 30 successful campaigns and had personally overseen the integration of 6 different species into the Galactic Council. To him, humans represented nothing more than another primitive species that needed to be educated about galactic hierarchy. Proxima Station was built around a red dwarf star, using a network of orbital platforms and asteroid habitats that stretched across the inner system. Unlike the crude outpost where HFY had first encountered humans, this installation demonstrated clear evidence of advanced engineering and strategic planning. Impressive, for a species that discovered faster-than-light travel less than a century ago, admitted fleet tactician Venkar during the approach. They'd managed to construct defensive positions that would challenge even established military powers. But Admiral Kexthal remained confident. Defensive positions are irrelevant when facing overwhelming force. "We will begin with standard siege protocols and escalate as necessary." HFY studied the tactical displays and felt a familiar sensation of unease. The human defensive layout didn't follow any recognized pattern from galactic military doctrine, but it also didn't appear random. There was a logic to the positioning of their platforms and weapon emplacements that suggested careful planning by someone who understood both human and alien military capabilities. The siege began with long-range bombardment from positions outside the system's asteroid belt. Standard procedure called for a demonstration of overwhelming firepower to encourage surrender while minimizing actual casualties. The Galactic Council had learned that most species would negotiate once they understood the futility of resistance. The humans responded to the bombardment with a transmission that appeared on every screen in the fleet simultaneously. The image showed a human female in what HFY recognized as military dress, standing in what appeared to be a command center. Behind her, HFY could see dozens of other humans working at stations with calm efficiency. "I'm Admiral Sarah Chen, Commanding Officer of Terran Defense Force Operations in the Proxima System," the human said. Her voice was steady and professional, without any trace of fear or desperation. "I've been instructed by the Terran colonial government to inform you that your presence in this system constitutes an act of war against humanity." Admiral Kexthal activated the fleet's response protocols, his image appearing on screens throughout the human installation. "Admiral Chen, I am Admiral Kexthal of the Galactic Council Fleet. You and your people are ordered to surrender immediately. You are facing the combined military might of 12 civilized species. Continued resistance will result in the total destruction of your installation." Admiral Chen smiled, that same expression that Commander Harrison had shown 6 months earlier. "Admiral Kexthal, I appreciate your concern for human casualties. However, I'm afraid you've misunderstood the situation. You're not besieging us. You're trapped. Before anyone on the Council fleet could respond to this apparent delusion, the tactical displays began showing movement throughout the Proxima system. Asteroid formations that had been classified as natural phenomena were revealing themselves as camouflaged human installations.
Mining operations that intelligence had dismissed as civilian infrastructure were activating military-grade weapon systems.
"Sir," reported Fleet Scanner Quintel, his voice rising in panic, "we're detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. The humans they've turned the entire star system into a fortress." What followed was a masterpiece of strategic deception that military academies would study for generations. The humans hadn't built Proxima Station as a single target to be besieged. They had spent decades converting every significant body in the system into a defensive position, creating a network of mutually supporting installations that could coordinate their defensive efforts across billions of kilometers.
How is this possible? Admiral Kexthal demanded. Our intelligence reports indicated a single major installation. Admiral Chan's voice came through the communication channels with what sounded like amusement. "Admiral, your intelligence reports were based on information we wanted you to have. Did you really think we wouldn't notice 300 warships massing at our border for the past 2 months?"
The revelation that the humans had known about the attack in advance sent shockwaves through the Council fleet's command structure. According to every military manual in the Galactic database, a pre-spaceflight species shouldn't have possessed the intelligence-gathering capabilities necessary to detect fleet movements across interstellar distances. But, as Admiral Chen explained over the open channel, humans had been monitoring galactic communications since their first contact with alien technology. They had developed translation protocols for dozens of languages, created detailed profiles of every major military leader in the Council fleet, and had been planning for exactly this scenario since the day they realized they weren't alone in the galaxy. "You see, Admiral," Chen continued, "humans have been fighting wars for our entire recorded history. We've developed certain principles about conflict that seem to be universal. One of those principles is that the best defense is to make your enemy come to you on ground of your choosing." The ground Admiral Chen had chosen was a star system that had been specifically engineered to destroy attacking fleets. The first wave of human attacks came from the outer asteroid belt, where mining platforms revealed themselves as long-range artillery positions. The projectiles they fired weren't sophisticated plasma bolts or energy beams, they were chunks of processed metal accelerated to significant fractions of light speed using electromagnetic launchers. "Kinetic bombardment," Admiral Chan's voice explained as massive tungsten rods began impacting Council vessels. "We learned the principle from your own geological surveys. A few tons of dense metal moving fast enough can penetrate any armor system and deliver energy equivalent to tactical nuclear weapons." The Council fleet's defensive systems were designed to intercept sophisticated guided missiles and energy weapons. They were not equipped to stop what amounted to hypervelocity arrows fired from positions millions of kilometers away. Admiral Kexthal ordered an immediate advance toward the inner system, hoping to close the distance and engage the human positions with direct fire. This played directly into Admiral Chen's strategy. As the Council fleet moved deeper into the system, they discovered that the humans had positioned their installations to create overlapping fields of fire that covered every possible approach route. More importantly, they had positioned those installations inside the system's natural hazards, asteroid fields, radiation zones, and gravitational anomalies that would interfere with Council targeting systems while providing perfect cover for human weapons. "Sir," reported Navigation Officer Velkan, "they're using the star's radiation emissions to mask their targeting signatures. Our sensors can't maintain locks on their positions." Meanwhile, the humans seemed to have no difficulty tracking and engaging Council vessels. Admiral Chen explained this apparent impossibility during one of her regular tactical updates. "Admiral Kexthal, your ships are designed for combat in open space against enemies using similar technology. But humans learn to fight in environments where superior force means nothing: jungles, mountains, urban areas where the terrain itself becomes a weapon. We've simply applied those same principles to space combat." The siege of Proxima Station became a masterclass in asymmetric warfare. The humans used every advantage of their position while systematically eliminating the Council fleet's technological superiority. When Council forces tried to use their advanced sensors to penetrate the system's natural interference, the humans jammed those sensors with precisely targeted electromagnetic pulses. When Council forces attempted to coordinate their attacks using quantum communication networks, the humans somehow managed to intercept and decode those supposedly unbreakable signals.
How are they reading our tactical communications? Admiral Kexthal demanded during an emergency command meeting. The answer came from an unexpected source.
One of the captured human installations had been broadcasting detailed explanations of their tactics on open channels, apparently for educational purposes. Council forces are using standard galactic encryption protocols, came the voice of a human identified as Dr. Michael Petrov. These protocols were designed for civilizations that developed technology in a linear fashion. Humans developed our mathematical and computational capabilities while fighting total wars against our own species. We've been breaking codes and designing unbreakable ciphers since before we had electronic computers. Dr. Petrov went on to explain that human cryptographers had been studying galactic communication protocols since first contact and had developed countermeasures for every major encryption system in known space. But the most devastating revelation came when Admiral Chen finally revealed the true purpose of the siege. Admiral Kexthal, she said during a communication that was broadcast to every ship in the Council fleet, I want you to understand what's happening here. You came to Proxima Station expecting to fight a desperate defensive action against a primitive species. Instead, you've discovered a carefully prepared trap designed by military strategists who have been planning for this encounter since we first detected your existence. The tactical displays confirmed Admiral Chen's words. The entire engagement had been orchestrated to draw the Council fleet into a position where they could be studied, analyzed, and systematically defeated. Every tactical decision Admiral Kexthal had made had been anticipated and countered by human forces who had spent months preparing for this specific engagement against this specific commander. Your military doctrine emphasizes overwhelming force and technological superiority, Admiral Chen continued. Those advantages become meaningless when your enemy controls the battlefield and has superior intelligence about your capabilities and intentions. The proof of her words came when human forces began demonstrating knowledge of Council tactics that should have been impossible for them to possess. They knew the technical specifications of every ship in the fleet. They knew the personal history and tactical preferences of every senior officer. They had somehow obtained detailed intelligence about Council military organization, logistics, and strategic planning that exceeded even the Council's own internal knowledge. The question you should be asking, Admiral Chen said, is not how we obtained this information. The question is why we're showing it to you. The answer to that question became clear during the final phase of the siege. Instead of destroying the Council fleet, the humans systematically disabled their ships while taking great care to minimize casualties. When Admiral Kexthal's own flagship was surrounded by human vessels, Admiral Chen opened a direct communication channel. Admiral, she said, you have a choice. You can continue this engagement and lose every ship in your fleet, along with the 100,000 beings serving under your command. Or you can accept reality and begin learning how warfare actually works. Admiral Kexthal, facing the complete destruction of the largest military force in galactic history, chose to listen. What followed was the most comprehensive military education in recorded galactic history. Over the course of 6 weeks, human instructors provided detailed analysis of every aspect of the siege, explaining how they had anticipated and countered every Council tactic while demonstrating alternative approaches that could have been more effective. Zexai participated in these educational sessions and found himself both fascinated and terrified by the depth of human military thinking. These beings approached warfare not as a contest of strength or technology, but as an intellectual puzzle to be solved through careful observation, creative thinking, and meticulous preparation. The key to understanding human military doctrine, explained Colonel James Rodriguez during one of these sessions, is recognizing that we've never been the strongest or fastest or most heavily armed species on our own planet. Everything we know about combat, we learned while fighting enemies that were bigger, stronger, and better equipped than we were. Colonel Rodriguez went on to explain that humans had developed their military capabilities specifically to overcome superior force through superior intelligence and preparation. They had studied every available piece of information about galactic military doctrine and had designed their entire strategic approach around exploiting what they perceived as fundamental weaknesses in Council thinking. You assume that technological superiority equals military superiority, Rodriguez said.
But technology is just tools.
Wars are won by the beings who use those tools more effectively. The educational sessions concluded with a demonstration that would haunt Zexhai for the rest of his existence. Admiral Chen invited Admiral Kexthal to observe a wargame between human forces using council technology and a simulated council fleet using human tactics and intelligence. The human forces, despite being limited to inferior technology, achieved a complete victory in less than 3 hours.
The difference, Admiral Chen explained, is not technology. The difference is that we've been preparing for this war since the day we realized we weren't alone in the universe. You've been preparing for business as usual.
When the Council fleet was finally released and allowed to return to galactic space, Admiral Kexthal carried with him detailed recommendations for immediate diplomatic contact with human forces. He explained that humanity represented not just a military threat, but a fundamental challenge to every assumption the Galactic Council had made about civilization, technology, and warfare. His recommendations were dismissed as defeatist propaganda, and Admiral Kexthal was relieved of command. The Galactic Council voted to escalate their military response to the human threat.
That decision led directly to the Battle of Wolf 359, where humanity demonstrated what they were capable of when they stopped being polite. Zexhai had been assigned to the intelligence division of the Grand Alliance fleet when the order came to mobilize for what military commanders called the final solution to the human problem. After the humiliation at Proxima Station, the Galactic Council had voted to authorize unlimited force against human territories.
No more demonstrations, no more attempts at siege warfare, no more educational exchanges.
The order was simple: complete extermination of human civilization.
The Grand Alliance fleet was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Over 800 vessels from 15 species, including planet-killer dreadnoughts from the Hegemony, quantum disruptor ships from the Syndicate, and bioweapon platforms from the Collective. Admiral Supreme Zarthal, commander of the fleet, had been given complete authority to use any weapons necessary to eliminate humanity as a species. No more half measures, Admiral Supreme Zarthal announced during the final briefing.
No more attempts to understand these creatures.
They have demonstrated that they are fundamentally incompatible with galactic civilization. We will sterilize every world they have touched and ensure that no trace of their influence remains. Zexhai sat in the intelligence section, reviewing tactical reports and feeling a growing sense of dread. He had tried to submit analysis based on his experiences with human military capabilities, but his reports had been classified as contaminated by prolonged enemy contact and dismissed without consideration. The target was Earth itself, the human homeworld that had been identified through careful analysis of their cultural references and technological development. Intelligence indicated that Earth housed approximately 8 billion humans and served as their primary industrial and command center. The plan was to emerge from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system and advance systematically, destroying any resistance before delivering planet-killing weapons to the human homeworld. As the Grand Alliance fleet prepared to enter the Sol system, Admiral Supreme Zarthal opened communication channels to deliver humanity's final ultimatum. "Attention, human forces," his voice boomed across all frequencies.
"This is Admiral Supreme Zarthal of the Galactic Council Grand Alliance fleet. You are hereby notified that your species has been declared incompatible with galactic peace. Surrender immediately for processing, or face complete extinction."
The response came not from Earth, but from a small space station in the outer system that hadn't appeared on any intelligence reports. The image showed a human male wearing what Zexhai had learned to recognize as military dress, but with markings and insignia that were completely unfamiliar. "Admiral Supreme Zarthal," the human said, "I'm General Marcus Cole, commanding Terran Defense Command for this engagement.
I've been authorized by the United Earth government to inform you that your ultimatum is rejected." Admiral Supreme Zarthal's crest flared with indignation. "You face 800 warships, General Cole. Your entire species will be extinct within the solar day."
General Cole smiled, but this smile was different from the ones Zexhai had seen from other humans. This smile held no amusement, no confidence, no challenge. This smile was cold and empty, and Zexai realized with growing horror that he was looking at something he had never seen before, a human who had stopped pretending to be civilized. "Admiral," General Cole said, "you've made a fundamental error in your understanding of human nature. You think we're like you, that will fight desperately to preserve our lives and surrender when facing impossible odds. But you're wrong about something important. Humans don't fear extinction. We've been living with the possibility of extinction since we developed nuclear weapons, and we learned a long time ago that some things are worse than death." The tactical displays began showing movement throughout the Sol system as previously undetected installations revealed themselves. But, unlike the siege at Proxima Station, these weren't defensive positions. They were weapons platforms on a scale that defied comprehension. "Sir," reported Fleet Scanner Tekrel, his voice tight with disbelief, "I'm detecting energy signatures throughout the system. These readings. Admiral, they appear to have converted their entire star system into a weapon." General Cole's voice continued from the communication channels. "Admiral, what you're looking at is the culmination of 50 years of human military engineering. Since the day we learned we weren't alone in the universe, every human government, corporation, and research institution has been working toward a single goal: making sure that anyone who tries to exterminate our species pays a price that will be remembered until the heat death of the universe." The first weapon to activate was positioned near the system's outer gas giant. What Admiral Zarthal had assumed was a small research station revealed itself as a gravitational manipulation device that began altering the planet's orbit. "Gravitational weapons," General Cole explained with the tone of a professor delivering a lecture. "We learned about gravitational manipulation from studying your own technology. The difference is that we're not using it for faster-than-light travel. We're using it to turn planets into projectiles." The sight of a gas giant the size of Jupiter slowly accelerating toward the Grand Alliance fleet had an immediate effect on crew morale throughout the alien ships. This was beyond anything in galactic military doctrine. Humans were apparently willing to destroy their own solar system to prevent their enemy from claiming it. "Impossible," Admiral Supreme Zarthal said. "You cannot control gravitational forces on that scale. The energy requirements alone would exceed your entire planetary output." "You're absolutely correct," General Cole agreed. "We can't power weapons like this using conventional energy sources. That's why we've spent the last 50 years developing alternative approaches to power generation." On cue, the star itself began showing signs of artificial manipulation. Solar flares erupted in precisely controlled patterns, and the star's energy output increased dramatically as magnetic field manipulators began harvesting stellar energy on a scale that should have been impossible for any technology. "Stellar engineering," General Cole continued. "We've essentially turned our sun into a battery. Every weapon system in this solar system draws power directly from our star. We have, quite literally, unlimited firepower." Zexai watched the tactical displays and realized that he was witnessing something that violated every principle of civilized warfare. These humans had built weapons designed not to win battles, but to ensure that their enemies regretted starting them. The second wave of reveals showed defense platforms throughout the inner system, not dozens, but thousands of installations that had been disguised as asteroids, space debris, and natural phenomena. Each platform carried weapons that were clearly derived from galactic technology but modified in ways that defied conventional understanding. "Kinetic kill vehicles," General Cole explained as the platforms began launching projectiles toward the Grand Alliance fleet. "We took your plasma cannon technology and asked ourselves, what if instead of firing energy bolts, we accelerated solid matter to near light speeds? The answer is that a grain of sand moving at 90% of light speed carries enough kinetic energy to destroy a dreadnought." The Grand Alliance fleet's defensive systems, designed to intercept sophisticated guided weapons, were completely ineffective against hypervelocity projectiles that were essentially invisible until they impacted their targets. Ships began disappearing from the tactical displays as kinetic rounds punched through armor that was designed to withstand plasma bombardment and antimatter warheads. Admiral Supreme Zarthal ordered an immediate advance toward Earth, hoping to use his fleet's superior numbers and firepower to overwhelm the human defenses before they could be completely destroyed. This decision played directly into the human strategy. As the Grand Alliance fleet moved deeper into the Sol system, they discovered that every significant body in the system had been converted into a weapons platform. The asteroid belt had become a minefield of kinetic bombardment stations.
The gas giants were surrounded by platforms that could manipulate magnetic fields to create electromagnetic pulse weapons on an interplanetary scale.
Even the system's comets had been equipped with propulsion systems that could redirect them as massive kinetic weapons.
"Admiral," General Cole said, "I want you to understand what you're seeing. This isn't a star system anymore. This is a weapon that we've been building for 50 years specifically to deal with threats like you."
But the true horror of human preparations became clear when the Grand Alliance fleet approached Earth itself. The planet was surrounded not by orbital defense platforms, but by what appeared to be industrial installations on a scale that defied belief.
"Shipyards," General Cole explained.
"We've been building ships specifically for this engagement. Ships designed using detailed intelligence about your technology, your tactics, and your psychology." The Earth orbital platforms began launching vessels that looked like they had been designed by someone who had studied every weakness in galactic military technology. These weren't the improvised civilian craft that had been used at previous engagements, these were purpose-built warships that combined human innovation with detailed knowledge of alien capabilities.
"Sir," reported Fleet Tactician Gexmar, "the human vessels are using technology that appears to be superior to our own. Their weapon systems are more efficient, their defenses are more effective, and their tactical coordination exceeds anything in our databases." General Cole's explanation was simple and terrifying. "We've had 50 years to study your technology and improve on it. Every piece of alien equipment we captured, every tactical manual we intercepted, every strategic principle we learned, we've used all of it to build a military force specifically designed to defeat galactic civilization." The engagement that followed was less a battle than a systematic demonstration of human military capabilities. The human fleet didn't simply fight the Grand Alliance forces, they dissected them. Each human ship seemed to know exactly what weapons their opponents carried, what defensive systems they used, and what tactical doctrines they followed. More disturbing was the realization that the humans were holding back. Their weapons were clearly capable of destroying the alien fleet quickly, but instead they were systematically disabling ships while broadcasting detailed tactical analysis for the benefit of any survivors. "Educational demonstration," General Cole explained. "We want to make sure that everyone understands exactly how outclassed you are. This isn't about military superiority, this is about intellectual superiority. We've simply thought about this problem longer and more carefully than you have." Zexhai found himself assigned to damage control parties as his own ship began taking systematic fire from human vessels. The humans weren't trying to destroy the ship, they were surgically disabling specific systems while leaving life support and crew quarters intact. When he reached one of the damaged sections, Zexhai found himself face to face with a human boarding party that had somehow penetrated the ship's defenses. The leader, identified by rank markings as a colonel, was directing teams to repair damage to life support systems while simultaneously installing what appeared to be monitoring equipment. "Colonel," Zexhai said, "I am Intelligence Officer Zexhai. I have previously had contact with human forces." The colonel looked up from his work and smiled, the same cold smile that General Cole had shown. "Zexhai. Yes, we have a file on you. You're the one who tried to convince your people to pursue diplomatic solutions. You know about my reports?" "Son," the colonel said, "we've been monitoring galactic communications since first contact. We know about every report, every briefing, every tactical analysis that's been produced about human capabilities. We've been planning this engagement based on detailed knowledge of every decision your military leaders would make." The colonel gestured toward the monitoring equipment his teams were installing. "We're placing educational sensors throughout your fleet. When this is over, you'll have complete recordings of every aspect of this engagement, how we planned it, how we executed it, and why your tactics were ineffective." "Why are you doing this?" The colonel's expression became serious. "Because we want to make sure this never happens again. We're not interested in conquest or dominance, we just want to be left alone. But if anyone else decides that humanity needs to be exterminated, we want them to know exactly what that decision will cost them." The battle ended when General Cole opened a fleet-wide communication channel to address Admiral Supreme Zarthal directly.
"Admiral," Cole said, "your fleet has been defeated. Your ships are disabled, your crews are alive, and your military careers are effectively over. You have two choices: you can continue fighting and force us to actually start killing you, or you can accept reality and begin the process of learning to coexist with humanity." Admiral Supreme Zarthal, facing the complete destruction of the most powerful military force in galactic history, chose to surrender. What followed was a month-long educational program that would reshape galactic understanding of warfare forever. Human instructors provided detailed analysis of every aspect of the engagement, explaining not just how they had achieved victory, but why galactic military doctrine was fundamentally flawed when facing an opponent that had been preparing specifically for this type of conflict. The central mistake, explained Dr. Elizabeth Reeves, the human military theorist who had overseen much of the strategic planning, is assuming that technological superiority equals military superiority. Technology is just one factor in warfare, and often not the most important one. Dr. Reeves went on to explain that humans had approached the problem of galactic warfare as an engineering challenge. They had identified every weakness in galactic military doctrine and had developed specific solutions for each problem. Superior firepower becomes irrelevant when your enemy controls the engagement and can dictate the terms of battle. Advanced defensive systems become useless when your enemy has developed weapons specifically designed to penetrate those defenses. Overwhelming numbers become a disadvantage when your enemy can choose when and where to fight. The most disturbing revelation came when General Cole explained the true scope of human preparations for galactic contact. "This engagement was a small-scale demonstration," he said. "We have weapons systems that we didn't use, tactics that we didn't employ, and capabilities that we didn't reveal. What you experienced was essentially a police action using obsolete equipment and limited tactics." When pressed for details about these undisclosed capabilities, General Cole simply smiled. "Let's just say that if this had been a real war instead of an educational demonstration, this conversation wouldn't be taking place." When the Grand Alliance fleet survivors were finally released and allowed to return to galactic space, they carried with them complete documentation of human military capabilities and detailed recommendations for immediate diplomatic contact. The Galactic Council voted to classify the entire engagement and pretend that it had never happened. This decision led directly to the Third Battle of Vega, where humanity finally lost patience with galactic civilization and decided to end the war permanently. 18 months after Wolf 359, HFY was serving aboard a monitoring station in neutral space when the communication arrived that would change galactic civilization forever. It was a simple message, broadcast on all frequencies throughout known space, and it came directly from Earth. "Attention, species of the Galactic Council," came the voice of someone identified as President Sarah Martinez, leader of the United Earth government. "For 3 years, humanity has attempted to establish peaceful relations with galactic civilization. We have demonstrated our defensive capabilities, provided detailed educational materials about human military doctrine, and repeatedly offered diplomatic solutions to our ongoing conflict." HFY listened with growing unease as President Martinez continued. "These offers have been rejected. Instead, the Galactic Council has voted to continue military action against humanity while classifying information about our capabilities to prevent their own populations from learning the truth about these engagements." The message paused, and, when it resumed, President Martinez's tone had changed subtly. "This ends now. The Galactic Council has exactly 72 standard hours to acknowledge human sovereignty and begin formal diplomatic relations. If this deadline is not met, humanity will consider itself to be at war with galactic civilization, and we will act accordingly." Throughout the galaxy, the reaction to this ultimatum was a mixture of outrage and amusement. How could a single species, no matter how clever their tactics, threaten an alliance that included thousands of worlds and hundreds of species? The human military had shown impressive capabilities, but they were still limited to a single star system while the Galactic Council controlled territory spanning dozens of sectors. The Council's response was swift and unanimous. They voted to reject the human ultimatum and authorized the formation of the Ultimate Response Fleet, a military force so large and powerful that it could sterilize entire sectors if necessary. The Ultimate Response Fleet consisted of over 2,000 vessels representing every major military power in the galaxy. planet killer weapons, reality manipulation technology, quantum disruptor bombs, and biological warfare systems that could sterilize worlds in hours. Admiral Prime Kex Thulmar, the supreme commander of galactic military forces, had been given authority to use any weapon necessary to end the human threat permanently. Zexai had been assigned to the intelligence division of the command ship Galactic Unity, along with other veterans of previous human engagements. Their role was to provide tactical analysis based on their experience with human military capabilities. "Sir," Zexai said during the final briefing, "I must recommend extreme caution. Previous engagements have demonstrated that humans' previous engagements were limited operations," Admiral Prime Kex Thulmar interrupted. "This is total war. We will not repeat the mistakes of measured response and educational objectives. We will arrive, we will destroy, and we will ensure that no trace of human civilization survives." The Ultimate Response Fleet spent 3 weeks in preparation, assembling weapons and tactics specifically designed to counter every human capability that had been observed in previous engagements. Their plan was simple: emerge simultaneously at multiple points around the Sol system, overwhelm any defenses before they could coordinate, and deliver planet-killing weapons directly to Earth. What they found when they arrived changed everything. The Sol system was gone. Where Earth's star should have been, there was only empty space and a single automated beacon broadcasting on all frequencies. "Attention, Ultimate Response Fleet," came a recorded message from General Marcus Cole. "Welcome to the Vega system. If you're receiving this message, it means you've discovered that Earth is no longer in the Sol system. Don't worry, we haven't destroyed our homeworld. We've moved it." The tactical displays confirmed the impossible. Somehow, humanity had relocated their entire star system to the Vega system, over 25 light-years from its original position. Not just the planets, the star itself, along with every asteroid, comet, and piece of debris that had been part of Sol. "Stellar engineering on this scale should be impossible," whispered Fleet Science Officer Keltar. "The energy requirements alone would exceed the total output of most galactic civilizations." General Cole's recorded message continued. "By now you've probably realized that we've moved our entire solar system. This project took us 18 months and required technology that we've been developing specifically for this conflict. Moving a star system is difficult, but it turns out to be easier than dealing with uninvited guests who keep showing up at our front door." Admiral Prime Kex Thulmar ordered an immediate scan of the Vega system. What they found was beyond anything in galactic military experience. The humans hadn't simply moved their solar system, they had improved it. The space around the star was filled with constructs that defied understanding, installations that existed on a scale that suggested engineering capabilities equivalent to those of precursor civilizations. "Sir," reported Fleet Tactician Velcour, "the energy outputs we're detecting exceed anything in our databases. They appear to have constructed a Dyson sphere around their star." A Dyson sphere, a theoretical construct that would surround an entire star to capture its complete energy output. This was technology that even the most advanced species in the galaxy considered impossible to build and unnecessary to contemplate. The humans had apparently built one as a military engineering project. "That's correct," General Cole's message continued, as if he could hear their tactical discussions. "We've enclosed our star in a network of energy collectors that capture nearly 100% of its output. This gives us access to more power than your entire galactic civilization uses in a standard year." But the true horror of the human preparations became clear when the automated beacon began transmitting detailed specifications of the weapons systems that were now trained on the Ultimate Response Fleet. "Stellar manipulation cannons," General Cole explained. "We've learned to focus and direct stellar energy as a weapon system. Each installation around our star can deliver energy equivalent to a supernova in a focused beam. We have approximately 10,000 such installations." The tactical display showed targeting systems throughout the Vega system locking onto every ship in the Ultimate Response Fleet. The humans could apparently track and target individual vessels across interstellar distances using sensors powered by the entire output of their star. "Quantum disruption fields," the message continued. "We've developed weapons that can destabilize matter at the atomic level across distances measured in light-years. These weapons can target specific molecular structures, say, the hull materials used in galactic warships, and render them inert. Admiral Prime Kexthalmar ordered an immediate withdrawal to what he considered safe range, beyond the edge of the Vega system.
The human weapons tracked them effortlessly. Gravitational manipulation weapons, General Cole's voice continued.
We can create artificial black holes, redirect the gravity wells of planets and stars, and generate gravitational waves that will propagate across galactic distances. Distance, as it turns out, is not a meaningful defense against weapons that operate by manipulating spacetime itself. The fleet's science officers confirmed that the energy readings they were detecting were consistent with weapons that could destroy entire star systems. The humans had apparently built military installations that could threaten not just individual worlds or fleets, but entire sectors of galactic space.
Now, General Cole said, let me explain what's going to happen.
You have exactly 1 hour to withdraw your fleet beyond a distance of 100 light-years from this system.
Any vessel that remains within that radius after the deadline will be destroyed.
This is not a negotiation.
Admiral Prime Kexthalmar activated the fleet's communication systems. General Cole, this is Admiral Prime Kexthalmar of the Ultimate Response Fleet.
You face 2,000 warships representing the combined military might of galactic civilization.
Your threats are meaningless against such overwhelming force.
The response was immediate. One of the installations around the human star fired a precisely controlled energy beam that traveled across the Vega system in seconds. The beam struck the asteroid that the Ultimate Response Fleet was using for cover and converted it into plasma in less time than it took for sensors to register the attack.
Demonstration complete, General Cole said. 59 minutes remaining. The Admiral ordered an immediate attack.
Every weapon system in the Ultimate Response Fleet opened fire simultaneously, delivering enough firepower to destroy entire planetary systems. The human installations absorbed the attacks without visible effect.
Barrier technologies, General Cole explained calmly. We've developed defensive systems that can absorb and redirect energy on any scale.
Your weapons are essentially charging our batteries. What followed was a systematic demonstration of technological superiority that reduced the Ultimate Response Fleet to scrap metal in less than 20 minutes. The human weapons didn't simply destroy the attacking ships, they deconstructed them at the molecular level, leaving behind clouds of component atoms that drifted harmlessly through space. But Zexhai noticed something that would haunt him forever: the humans were still being careful to preserve life. Even as they disintegrated warships with weapons that operated on stellar scales, they were somehow managing to extract crew members before destroying their vessels.
We're detecting life support pods throughout the engagement area, reported Fleet Medical Officer Zentul.
The humans they're saving our people even while they destroy our ships. When the engagement ended, Admiral Prime Kexthalmar found his command crew aboard a human vessel that had apparently materialized around their escape pod. The human officer who greeted them introduced herself as Admiral Chen, the same Admiral Chen who had commanded the defense of Proxima Station.
Admiral, she said, you and your surviving crews are being taken to a processing facility where you'll receive medical attention and education about the current strategic situation.
What strategic situation?
Admiral Kexthalmar demanded.
Admiral Chen smiled, but this smile carried no warmth, no amusement, and no challenge.
This was the smile of someone delivering news that was both final and non-negotiable. Admiral, the war is over. Humanity has won.
The processing facility was built into what appeared to be a small planet that was entirely artificial, a construct the size of a world that had been built around advanced manufacturing and educational facilities. Zexhai and the other survivors found themselves in comfortable quarters with access to detailed information about human capabilities and intentions. The education they received was comprehensive and terrifying. Humanity had spent the 18 months since Wolf 359 building weapons and defenses that operated on scales that most galactic species couldn't comprehend. They had technologies that could manipulate matter and energy in ways that violated several supposed laws of physics. The key to understanding human capabilities, explained Dr. Sarah Kim during one of the educational sessions, is recognizing that we approach scientific and engineering problems differently than most species. While galactic civilization developed technology gradually over thousands of years, humans developed our scientific capabilities while fighting total wars against our own species. Dr. Kim went on to explain that humans had achieved in decades what most species required centuries to accomplish because they had been motivated by the constant threat of extinction. Their scientific and engineering capabilities had been forged by necessity and refined by conflict. We've also had the advantage of studying galactic technology and improving on it, Dr. Kim continued. We didn't have to invent faster-than-light travel or energy shields or quantum computation. We studied your implementations of these technologies and designed better versions. But the most disturbing revelation came when the humans explained their long-term strategic goals. We're not interested in conquest, Admiral Chen explained during a general assembly of all survivors. We don't want to rule galactic civilization or control your territories. What we want is simple. We want to be left alone to develop our civilization in peace. Admiral Chen activated a holographic display showing the current strategic situation throughout the galaxy. Human forces had simultaneously attacked and neutralized military installations in dozens of systems, systematically eliminating every significant military threat to human territory while carefully avoiding civilian casualties. As of today, Admiral Chen continued, galactic military forces no longer exist as a meaningful threat to humanity. We have disabled your weapons manufacturing capabilities, neutralized your strategic weapon stockpiles, and demonstrated that your most advanced military technologies are obsolete. The holographic display showed human installations throughout galactic space, monitoring stations, defensive platforms, and what appeared to be industrial facilities on a scale that rivaled planetary civilizations. We've established a defensive perimeter around human territory that extends approximately 50 light-years in all directions, Admiral Chen explained. Any military vessel that enters this zone without authorization will be destroyed. Any attempt to rebuild galactic military forces will be detected and prevented. Admiral Prime Kex Tholmar found his voice. You're talking about the military conquest of the entire galaxy. Admiral Chen's expression became serious. No, Admiral. We're talking about enforced peace. We've studied galactic history, and we've learned that your species have been fighting wars against each other for thousands of years. We're going to put an end to that. The implications of this statement were staggering. Humanity was apparently planning to impose peace on the galaxy by systematically preventing military conflict between species. How? Admiral Kex Tholmar asked. Superior intelligence and overwhelming technological advantage, Admiral Chen replied. We'll know about military buildups before they begin. We'll intercept hostile communications before they're sent. We'll prevent wars by making them impossible. Over the following weeks, reports began arriving from throughout galactic space confirming Admiral Chen's claims. Human forces had established monitoring and control systems in every major star system. They were intercepting and preventing military shipments, mediating disputes between species, and systematically dismantling the infrastructure that had supported galactic warfare. But most disturbing was the realization that the humans were being effective. For the first time in galactic history, there were no active military conflicts anywhere in known space. Species that had been fighting each other for centuries were suddenly forced to resolve their differences through negotiation rather than violence. When HFY was finally released and allowed to return to Vorthan space, he found a galaxy that was fundamentally different from the one he had known. Human observers were present on every major world, not as conquerors but as peacekeepers who prevented conflicts before they could escalate. The Galactic Council still existed, but it now operated under human oversight and was required to focus on trade, diplomacy, and resource allocation rather than military planning. Species that had once commanded vast fleets now found themselves limited to civilian vessels and defensive systems that were monitored and regulated by human technology. HFY submitted his final report to what remained of Vorthan Military Command. His recommendations were simple: accept the new reality and learn to function in a galaxy where military solutions were no longer available. His report was accepted without question. There was no longer any galactic military authority to disagree with his assessment. Humanity had ended war not by winning it, but by making it impossible. 5 years after the Battle of Vega, Zexai found himself in a position he had never expected, serving as a cultural liaison between the Vorthan Republic and the Human Peacekeeping Authority. The galaxy had changed in ways that most beings were still struggling to understand, and Zexai's unique experience with human military capabilities made him one of the few aliens qualified to help his people navigate their new reality. The headquarters of the Human Peacekeeping Authority was located on a space station called Haven, constructed in neutral space between the major galactic powers. The station itself was a testament to human engineering capabilities, a structure the size of a small moon that provided comfortable living quarters for representatives from hundreds of different species while serving as the coordination center for human peacekeeping operations throughout the galaxy. Zexai's role was to help other aliens understand how humans thought and why they made the decisions they did. It was not an easy job, since most galactic species found human psychology to be fundamentally incomprehensible. They could control everything, said Ambassador Kexlon of the Hegemony during one of the regular diplomatic briefings. They have the technology and military power to rule the galaxy as absolute dictators. Why do they waste time with negotiations and cultural exchange programs? Zexai had learned to answer this question carefully. Because humans don't want to rule the galaxy, Ambassador. They want the galaxy to be stable and peaceful so they can focus on their own development without constantly dealing with external threats. But that makes no sense, protested Trade Minister Veltar from the Syndicate. Power is meant to be used. Any species with their capability should be expanding their territory and subjugating weaker civilizations. This attitude, Zexai had learned, was exactly what humans found most disturbing about galactic civilization. During his 5 years of working with human authorities, he had come to understand that humans genuinely viewed conquest and domination as signs of civilization failure rather than success. Director Sarah Walsh, the human administrator who oversaw cultural relations, had explained this during one of their early meetings. Zexai, the fundamental difference between humans and most galactic species is that we've learned to see war as a problem to be solved rather than a tool to be used. For us, military force is a last resort when all other options have failed. For most galactic species, military force seems to be the first option when dealing with any disagreement. Director Walsh went on to explain that humans had studied galactic history and had been appalled by the constant warfare between species. From the human perspective, galactic civilization had been trapped in a cycle of violence that prevented any meaningful progress or development. We calculated that galactic species spend approximately 40% of their resources on military preparation and conflict, Director Walsh said. Imagine what your civilizations could accomplish if that energy was directed toward exploration, research, art, or cultural development. The Human Peacekeeping Authority operated under principles that most aliens found bizarre. Instead of governing through force or intimidation, humans used what they called constructive intervention. They prevented conflicts by addressing their underlying causes and helped species develop better methods for resolving disputes. Zexai had witnessed this approach during the Andromedae border dispute, where two species that had been fighting over territory for 3 centuries were forced to sit down with human mediators and work out a permanent solution. The humans had analyzed the dispute and determined that both species actually needed access to specific resources rather than control of territory. The solution was to establish shared mining operations and resource exchange agreements that gave both sides what they actually wanted without requiring territorial conquest. The key insight, explained Dr. Michael Chen, one of the human psychologists who studied interspecies conflict, is that most wars are based on misunderstanding what the participants actually want. Species fight over territory when they really want resources. They fight over resources when they really want security. They fight over security when they really want respect and recognition. Dr. Chen's team had developed conflict resolution protocols that could analyze disputes and identify workable solutions that addressed everyone's fundamental needs. These protocols were being used throughout the galaxy with remarkable success. For the first time in galactic history, there had been 5 consecutive years without a single interspecies war. But the most dramatic change was in how species related to each other. Without the constant threat of military conflict, galactic civilization was experiencing an unprecedented period of cultural exchange and technological advancement. We're seeing innovation rates that are approximately 300% higher than historical averages, reported Dr. Lisa Park, the human scientist who monitored technological development throughout the galaxy. When species don't have to spend their time and resources preparing for war, they can focus on solving other problems.
Zexhai had seen this change in his own people.
The Vorthan Republic, freed from the need to maintain expensive military forces, had redirected their resources towards scientific research and cultural development. Vorthan mathematicians were collaborating with human scientists on projects that would have been impossible during the war years.
Vorthan artists were creating works inspired by human philosophy and aesthetics. But not everyone was happy with the new reality.
"This is not freedom," declared Senator Quindar during a session of the Vorthan Council.
"This is slavery with comfortable chains. We are being controlled by an alien species that has imposed their values on our entire civilization."
Zexhai found himself defending human policies more and more often as the years passed. "Senator, humans have not imposed their values on us. They have prevented us from imposing our violence on each other."
"There is a difference." "Is there?" Senator Quindar demanded. "We cannot build military vessels. We cannot develop weapons technology.
We cannot settle disputes through traditional means.
How is this different from conquest?"
The answer to this question had become central to Zexhai's understanding of human philosophy. During his time working with the Peacekeeping Authority, he had learned that humans distinguished between freedom and license. Freedom, in human thinking, was the ability to make meaningful choices about one's life and future. License was the ability to harm others without consequences. Director Walsh had explained this distinction during one of their philosophical discussions. "Zexhai, your people seem to believe that freedom includes the right to attack other species when you disagree with them.
From our perspective, that's not freedom, that's anarchy.
True freedom requires a stable system where everyone can pursue their goals without fear of violence."
The human approach to peacekeeping was based on this principle.
They didn't prevent species from developing technology or expanding their territory or pursuing their cultural goals. They only prevented species from using violence to achieve these objectives. "Consider the Hegemony Expansion Project," Director Walsh continued. "Under the old system, the hegemony would have conquered 3 star systems and displaced millions of beings to acquire the resources they needed. Under our system, they negotiated resource-sharing agreements with the existing inhabitants and achieved the same goals without causing suffering."
Zexhai had to admit that the results spoke for themselves.
The hegemony had acquired the resources they needed, the existing inhabitants had received technology and trade benefits, and nobody had died in the process. This approach required more time and effort than simple conquest, but it produced better outcomes for everyone involved. But perhaps the most significant change was in how species viewed humans themselves. The fear and horror that had characterized early contact had been replaced by a complex mixture of respect, gratitude, and dependency that made many aliens uncomfortable.
"We have become children," complained Cultural Minister Lexthan during a Vorthan diplomatic meeting.
"We rely on humans to resolve our disputes, protect our territories, and prevent our conflicts.
What happens when they decide they no longer want this responsibility?" This question haunted many species throughout the galaxy.
Humans had demonstrated that they could impose their will on galactic civilization, but they had also demonstrated that they could withdraw their protection. The stability that everyone now enjoyed depended entirely on human willingness to continue their peacekeeping efforts. Zexhai had discussed this concern with Director Walsh, and her response had been both reassuring and terrifying.
"Zexhai, humans view peacekeeping as an investment in our own security.
As long as galactic civilization remains stable and peaceful, we can focus on our own development without worrying about external threats.
We have every incentive to continue these policies indefinitely." "But what if human priorities change?" Zexhai had asked.
Director Walsh had smiled, the same smile that Zexhai had learned to associate with humans delivering uncomfortable truths.
"Then, galactic civilization will need to demonstrate that it has learned to maintain peace without our assistance."
This possibility led to the establishment of the Galactic Peace Institute, a joint project between human authorities and galactic governments to develop indigenous peacekeeping capabilities. The Institute's mission was to train alien diplomats, mediators, and peace negotiators who could eventually take over human responsibilities. HFY was selected as one of the first graduates of the Institute's advanced program. The training was comprehensive and challenging, requiring students to master human conflict resolution techniques, interspecies psychology, and the complex mathematics of resource allocation and territorial management. The goal, explained Dr. James Rodriguez, the Institute's director, is not to create human-style peacekeepers, but to help each species develop peacekeeping approaches that work within their own cultural contexts. Dr. Rodriguez went on to explain that humans had no intention of maintaining galactic peacekeeping responsibilities indefinitely. Their long-term plan was to gradually transfer these responsibilities to trained galactic personnel while maintaining a monitoring and support role. "We want to return to our own territory and focus on our own civilization," Dr. Rodriguez said. "But we can only do that when we're confident that galactic civilization can maintain stability without our direct intervention." This goal led to the Great Transition Project, a carefully planned transfer of peacekeeping responsibilities from human authorities to trained galactic personnel. The project was scheduled to take place over a 50-year period, with increasing responsibilities being transferred to alien peacekeepers as they demonstrated competence and reliability. HFY was appointed as one of the regional coordinators for the Great Transition Project. His responsibilities included training other aliens, monitoring potential conflict situations, and serving as a liaison between human authorities and galactic governments. The work was demanding and often frustrating. Many species struggled to understand human peacekeeping principles and continued to believe that military force was the most effective solution to disputes. Training programs had to be adapted for different psychological profiles, cultural values, and communication styles. But, gradually, progress was being made. Species throughout the galaxy were learning to resolve conflicts through negotiation rather than violence. Trade agreements were replacing territorial conquests. Cultural exchange was replacing military alliances. "We're seeing fundamental changes in how species relate to each other," reported Dr. Sarah Kim during a progress review meeting. "Galactic civilization is developing new social structures based on cooperation rather than competition." The most significant indicator of this change was the establishment of the Galactic Cooperation Council, a new governing body that replaced